This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about some exciting things going on in her world that will affect you as someone who just likes the Disney theme parks, likes opportunities, likes to get outside, likes to get healthy. It's Lisa DiNoto is here with us. Lisa, welcome to the show. It is the first time you've ever been on Coffee with Kenobi.
Yeah, this is my first time. I'm so excited. I was so thrilled when you asked if I'd be interested in joining. So,
oh my
the
gosh,
day has finally arrived.
The day has arrived. So, if you're familiar with the Castle Run, I guess we should rewind a little bit. You and I know each other because we have a mutual friend. His name is Lou Mangello. Now, don't hold that against us. We know Lou can be squirrely. If you know Lou, you know he likes to joke. But sort of, how did you get? And we met at D23, right? Was it like 2 or 3 times ago?
Yeah, it's been a number of years back, but yeah, I think it was definitely at D23 when we first crossed paths.
Absolutely. And so how did you kind of get into this world of Disney and fandom and becoming a content creator yourself?
So for me, it was definitely like something that happened to me as an adult. It wasn't a lifelong fandom specifically. Like I, at least, and we can kind of the through lines of running and Disney and being a content creator or creator in that space kind of run parallel and then intersect somewhere along the way. So we can kind of pick up a thread and see where it takes us. But
right.
Just with respect to Disney specifically, because I think that's kind of the unifying thread through all of this. I always say I was certainly not we weren't a Disney obsessed family. I wasn't a Disney obsessed kid growing up, to say the least, and much less was I what has been come to be called a Disney adult. In my young adult life, maybe that didn't quite exist in my young adult life. I don't know if Disney adults were a thing yet at that point, but yeah, like we would take pretty regular trips to Disney when I was a child, and come back, and life went on and was normal, and we enjoyed it, and it was a fun thing to do. But I didn't come back like obsessed and longing for this place, like I think some people always have. It was for me. I think there was probably a fairly long break during my young adult life when I wasn't at the parks for a little while. And then, after having both of my sons, I, unfortunately, and I've told this, this story before, unfortunately lost my father to cancer, about a dozen years ago. And I think just like kind of being in the thick of that for so long with my family and with my mother, took a lot out of us, as it does. And I just remember sitting at the kitchen table, at my kitchen table, my former kitchen table, with my mom up in Maryland. It was obviously before we lived down here, probably about a few months, I guess, after we lost my dad, kind of in the thick of like the red tape and the paperwork of it all, like that mess of stuff that like people don't talk about. That's a part of losing somebody. And I remember just like trying to like weed through all of this paperwork with her and get through all this stuff. And we were in the midst of all of this, and we were both like, we just need to like take a trip. Like we just need to get the heck out of Dodge and take a trip and just like do something light and happy and like the opposite of what the last year of our lives had been. And where else to go but the happiest place on earth. And I had 2 little boys at that point who I sort of was ready to take to the parks and have a fun time, was in the mom role for the first time. So we picked this, we scheduled this trip to Disney. It was probably about 6 months after he passed away for that fall. Booked Boardwalk for no other reason but that it looked nice in the website, just like kind of, and I think even before we got here, like something about planning that trip, like just tickled my little type A super hyper planning heart, like and I was like able to kind of dive into something happy. So I became like obsessed with scoring the Ohana reservation and getting the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, like fast pass it was at the time. And, like all of the scheduling related things. And I had just a lot of fun with the planning aspect of it. And then we came down for the trip. Like I said, it was that October. It was October of 2014. And I remember like a few different times in that trip, like standing outside on the boardwalk. It was Columbus Day weekend. So it's that like perfect, we're in the thick of August right now. So very different, but that perfect like October weather. standing outside. It was like room temperature with a breeze, and the kids were like happily watching Magician after leaving the parks. And we're just like looking around myself and thinking, like, kind of shockingly to myself, like, I could live here. Like, and it wasn't Space Mountain or Mickey Mouse, or like, it wasn't any of like the Ohana Reservation. It wasn't any of those things. It was just kind of just the vibe of it all, just kind of meshed with who I was at that point. I think I needed like a hyper dose of Disney at that point in my life too. And I remember standing outside on the hub at Magic Kingdom watching, if you remember the Celebrate the Magic show, the projection show, the most beautiful, and I miss it so much. It was such a beautiful show. But I remember standing in front of the castle watching that show and thinking, but these people get it. Like, wow, these people get it. And just, they just did everything right. And I think I just, like, I fell head over heels. It was that first trip back. There was no delay, head over heels for it. My mom and I actually ended up coming back just a few weeks later, just the two of us for a weekend. And we ran around and saw all the different DVC resorts because we had decided we wanted to buy into DVC, but had only stayed at Boardwalk. So we ended up doing this marathon trip down, just the two of us, and kind of saw everything. We ended up buying DVC at Boardwalk. And it was just out the gate. And from that point on, and we can kind of thread the running needle into all of it and how that kind of gets mixed in. But, from that point on, I think we started taking like semi-regular trips down here, and it was kind of this sort of light spot in our lives.
Sure.
And like I said, I think it just like, it was what I needed at that time. Like it found me at a time of my life when I needed it and never let go. So that's the Disney part.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so many things to glean from that, but I mean, obviously, most importantly, sorry about the loss of your dad. I've certainly lost people in my life to cancer, and it's something that we know is a reality, but it's also something that we know the people that we love that are no longer with us, they want us to find ways to move on, to grow, to prosper, to be the people that they want us to be. Right. And you chose an incredibly positive, healthy avenue that not only has been good for your soul, but also for your physical health. And the countless people who've been enjoying your work online. Lisa's also an exceptional photographer. She had core memory candles, which you don't, I think I may have told you this when I first met you years ago, but I bought a bunch of your candles. And so when I met you at Lou's booth, I was like, sweet. It just kind of all worked into place. So I'd love to ask you about the candles, but I know that's sort of a thing that's in your rearview mirror. But what isn't is the Run Disney companion. Lisa, if you follow her on Instagram, she says certainly a must follow. But Lisa has been at, how many races have you done for Run Disney?
It's over 100 now. This past Wine and Dine race weekend, which was last fall, I hit 100. So I've cleared that hurdle. That's quite a symbolic word choice there. How did you get into running, and how did this lead to the Run Disney companion? So like I said, I mean, I think all of these stories kind of run parallel to each other and then kind of intersect at some point along the way. And it was that same time in my life when my dad was ill. And I had always kind of been into fitness. I'd always kind of done all the things you're supposed to do to take care of yourself. And I had a pretty grueling, I used to be a kind of big corporate lawyer, did M&A and stuff. And it was sort of rough hours and a tough lifestyle. And I kind of did all of the things that you're responsibly supposed to do to take care of yourself and things like that. And drinking the water and working out and eating healthy and, everything but the sleep. I didn't get much of the sleep. And so, and on that list of things was like doing meditations, like, fully for functional reasons. Like I would sit and meditate and sort of clear my head. And so I could kind of be productive and keep focused and doing all the things. Not that it wasn't for woo-woo reasons as well, but, setting that aside.
Sure.
But when my dad was ill, I remember, sitting down one day to do a meditation, and I was kind of in the thick of it and really needed it at that time. But I remember sitting down to do a meditation, and my body just like revolted in a way. Like it was, we can probably talk a little bit about the Force in the context of all of this and how that functions and with all of it and mindset and all that stuff. But if we want to make it relevant, but yeah, I sat down to do a meditation kind of in the thick of that very, very, I can't understate like the nightmarishness of that sort of portion of my life. It was really awful. And my body just said like, no, we're not sitting still with this right now. I couldn't sit still with it. And for no like conscious reason, I think it was like a very kind of instinctual thing. I just went for a run. Like I literally just went for a run. I was like Forrest Gump. I just went for a run. And I think I just kind of needed to get it out. And running became a kind of meditation for me and all of that. Like it became like a kind of moving meditation where like you can't really, it's very difficult to spiral when you're running because you're like putting all of your physical exertion into something else.
And get those endorphins going.
Yeah, exactly. Like get the endorphins going, like kind of put the energy somewhere productive and kind of get it out. And through the act of running, I think it becomes possible to kind of tiptoe into those parts of your mind that don't feel safe to go into. It gets kind of heavy, but like that don't feel safe to go to, you know, when you're sitting still. And you can kind of like run alongside those things, you know, and process them in that way. And so that was kind of how the running started. Like I said, I'd always been, you know, a healthy person and I would sort of warm up with a run before doing a workout or whatever, but distance running had never had any kind of draw to me before that. But I just started running during that time in my life and kind of kept running. And after we lost my dad, I kept running. And I think I had realized that it was serving a kind of bigger purpose in my life at that point. Like it was, you know, I ended up leaving that, you know, kind of miserable corporate law job, you know, it was 6 months after running my first half marathon. And that wasn't a coincidence. I think when you're getting out there and doing those runs and doing those things, your mind starts to sort of process all the things that maybe you've been putting off. And so it was serving me in that way. So like I said, I lost my dad and just kept running. And then I found out, and then, you know, along that same time period of my life, like I just talked about, I had kind of fallen in love with Disney. Mm-hmm. And then I found out that the Princess Half Marathon in 2016 was on the 2-year anniversary of my dad's passing.
Wow.
So like the day after my birthday.
Wow.
So I was like, so it just felt like, it felt like the universe was like giving me this thing, like this like symbolic purpose. And like, mm-hmm. it was kind of like a way to show the universe I was still kicking after everything that I had been through in that point. And so I registered for it. And, you know, through that like fall and winter, I trained for it. And it just kind of gave me purpose and direction and a goal. And like, again, like someplace to put that energy and something symbolic that I was kind of doing to show that I was still here. And I ran that first Run Disney race that February of 2016, and you know the rest is history. So, so that was the first. I just ran that standalone half marathon, Princess Weekend of 2016, and then I came back for Wine and Dine the next year and the next fall, the next season, and did all 3 of those races, and have just been. And then when we moved down here, obviously, and they became like literally local runs. I live a stone's throw from Cinderella Castle. I just started running all of them. So it's been kind of a love story through and through, from Disney to Run Disney. And then, you know, beginning to share both the journey of kind of recreating myself after leaving the law job and, you know, and my running story, obviously, as well, that I share pretty openly on the Castle Runner on my Instagram and on my website, The Castle Run.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that here with our Coffee with Kenobi family. And so I've got so many questions, mostly things like, how are your knees, you know, things like that. But you obviously have good shoes and you know how to stretch, and you know how to do all the things to take care of yourself. And a lot of that is sort of present in the Run Disney Companion. Talk to us about the Run Disney Companion. What inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. So, like I just started to allude to, you know, I always joke, like you can take the girl out of corporate law, but you can't take the corporate law out of the girl. Like, I still, you know, I'm still that person who is hyper organized and, you know, likes to kind of figure out all the details and get into the nitty gritty and organize things.
I'm a high school teacher, so I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, when Disney and Run Disney release kind of the official guide for the weekend, classic Disney, it tends to be a little bit difficult to decipher and navigate. And so I would kind of go in and break it all down and figure out like all of the nitty gritty, like the road closures are going to be and what time I need to be into corral and what the transportation is going to be like and all of the kind of like logistical details. And so, and also kind of all of the heart that I just talked about, like kind of the reality of my running story and all those things. And so I started to pretty regularly share on my website, The Castle Run, and then also a version of it on my Instagram, The Castle Runner, kind of a breakdown of all of those things so that everybody else would have it too. So it became a sort of a hub for, both the mindset related stuff of running, because I'm very much into that, and also the kind of logistical, kind of more practical end of things. And over time, I started to realize that I was reproducing the same, the details change each race weekend and the policies change a little bit, but I think over time I started to realize that I was kind of reproducing a lot of the same types of material again and again and again, and that there was probably not necessarily a better home for it, but a very, very good home for it between the covers of a book, because so much of the information is evergreen. And when you can kind of put it in a book for somebody to hold, I think it starts to become feel a lot more doable. Mm-hmm. And as the Run Disney community, like the running community at large, and really the Run Disney community in a very big way, has been expanding to inspire lots of people to kind of come into this world of running. I think, you take all the complications of a Disney trip, which I think can in itself be very overwhelming and intimidating, and then you layer in all of the sort of running related aspects of it. For somebody who's a newcomer to it, I think it can probably and can definitely feel very, very overwhelming, to the point of kind of scaring people off from trying. Mm-hmm. And the goal of at least in part, the goal of the Run Disney Companion is to literally hold your hand from start to finish, from the initial, like, it talks you through each race weekend and what the themes are and when they are and what the distances are, like all of the sort of things that you would need to know to choose which race you want to run, through to registration and training and costuming and, race week and race morning and the race. We're like 10 chapters in before I get to the race itself.
Right.
Because I'm a little bit verbose, but it's fine.
It helps with the book.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it kind of holds your hand like from start to finish for the entirety of the process in a way that I hope, and I think, I feel like it was successful to kind of make the person who was perhaps coming in from the outside as a newcomer feel, once they're finished reading it, like they know all of the things. I mean, I know I would have loved to have had this book in my hands a dozen years ago, so or 10 years ago. So I've tried to do that for everyone else. And then there's just, and all of the kind of heart and mindset and things like that I spoke about before is in there as well. And that's how the book also speaks to the kind of the veteran runner and the veteran Run Disney runner, in addition to the newcomer. So it serves both of those audiences, I think. It's very much a practical, logistical guide for the newcomer, which is kind of, the practical reason for the book's existence. But I couldn't not also write it for the veteran runner, because the book at its heart is a love letter to this community. So
what a great way to say that. It's like you're a writer or something. It's really important too, because I think there's such an intimidation factor, especially if you're someone who wants to be in shape. It's important for you whether you walk or run. It's good for your body. It's good for your heart. It's good for your soul, as you've graciously alluded to. So this helps you to get comfortable in that process of getting ready to start, not only to do a Run Disney race, but just to run in general and take better care of yourself. I mean, I'm sure you've heard all of the jokes. My wife and I like to joke. My wife jokes and says, if I'm running, you better run too, because it means someone is chasing me, which we love. I love stuff like that. But it's really important. And by the way, she's in excellent shape. She's very active. But tell us kind of how it helps people to get started.
So I think, above all else, I think the sort of message throughout, like that runs the line of the book, it bigger than, and more important than kind of the logistical details of like how to schedule and plan your trip and go to Expo and pick up your bib and all the things, is just the sort of the idea that and it's a life, it's one of the many life lessons that come out of running or anything that I think that you choose to dedicate yourself to, is that it's consistency and just showing up for yourself above all else, and that the rest will come. And that, if you kind of come in from the outside and think, and first of all, you don't have to start with a marathon, you can start with a 5K, but even, that distance, I think, is overwhelming to a lot of people from the outset. And that it's really not about like waking up tomorrow and sort of thinking, okay, I need to get myself to the point where I can comfortably run a 5K or a 10K or a marathon or whatever distance it is. It's just kind of choosing your training plan and then showing up for it regularly. Mm-hmm. And that might start very, very gently. I've talked to so many people, and I've talked to so many people since announcing the book, who kind of come out of the woodwork and started reaching out to me more regularly, who are just kind of inspired to go outside and do a loop around their neighborhood. That might be a mile, it might be less than a mile, it might be 15 minutes of movement, but those 15 minutes become 20, and then those 20 become 30, and on until, you've naturally, and without even having to really think about it, like built up to the point where you're doing the race that was your goal.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the through lesson of all of it, is that like tortoise and the hare story was, it was on to something, and it's really just about, it's not the magic of any one training plan or of, waking up tomorrow and being able to, do an ultra marathon or anything like that. It's really just like choosing a training plan and choosing to show up for it, and like choosing to show up for it, even though you're the only person who would know if you didn't. And like just doing that over and over again, like the repeated act of keeping a promise to yourself that like you only owe to yourself, it like rewires something in your brain. It really does. Like that, because that voice in the back of your head, like that tells you that it's more comfortable to stay in bed, like that voice never goes away. Like you can be an ultra marathoner, like you still don't necessarily want to hop out of bed when that alarm goes off before dawn or before sunrise in the morning. But what you've learned is that like if you kind of turn off, like that voice isn't you, and you can turn that voice off and do the thing anyway, and then the good feeling comes after the thing. Right.
Because the hardest time to do something is the day after you don't do it. Right, because you give yourself that day off, working out, what have you, and then you just have to like re-gear up, because it really is about, it's a purpose, it's a mindset. And I feel like Run Disney is so great at doing that. The only Run Disney race I did, it's very hard to do a Run Disney race as an educator, because we only have a certain amount of days off per year, and I don't think they do them during the summer unless I'm missing something.
No, now they do like virtuals that you can sign up for in the summer, but no, just because of the nature of the season down here and the heat, the season runs from fall to spring.
Right, that makes sense. Because I did around COVID, I did a Star Wars virtual race, and I got my medal. It's still a really, really cool part of my collection, because they're excellent medals. They're very, very thick, and they just have like this high collectability factor to them. I'm assuming you've got this awesome display of all of your medals somewhere.
Yeah, I have.
Some
of them are in a bin, admittedly, but no, I have a pretty massive display of the medals. At one point, I had so many on the hooks that it literally fell off the wall, like it pulled itself out of the anchor in the wall. But yeah, no, they've been remounted, and there's quite a few of them. I think I probably, if you did the virtual during COVID, I think I know exactly the medal set that you have, and those were very cool.
They were very cool. Yeah, it's I wish that they would do another Star Wars, but I think it just. Have you seen like a sort of a method to the madness of how they pick the different themes? I mean, Wine and Dine, I guess, is pretty obvious.
I mean, a bit. So they used to have. I mean, you probably know as well as I do. So they started with the light side themed races out in Disneyland in 2015. Yes. And then the next year, I think it was in 2016, when they brought the dark side out to the East Coast to here. And that was like the springtime races. There was the 5K, 10K, and half marathon that were themed to Star Wars. It was like post Lucasfilm acquisition. And I think it wasn't the only place, like they were starting to kind of pull like all the interest, like all the cool new IP into what they were doing. So yeah, so they did light side first out on the West Coast, and then they did dark side here, and then they would do the Kessel Run Challenge, which was over the course of a year. You would have to do both of them. Well,
Did
it
you do
was
it?
just those 2 weekends. So
Right.
I did do it one time. Yeah. Before, cause I was it was right on the heels of like it was right on like when I had started running that they were still doing those races. So I was able to get one of them in, which was very, very cool. But yeah, so they would do light side and dark side. And then when they put the West Coast races on hiatus for a while, they converted the Disney World Star Wars weekend to Rival Run. So they kind of did, and you could kind of choose whether you wanted to be light side or dark side when you registered and dress accordingly. And I think your bib kind of reflected what you had chosen. And then they did do the virtual during COVID, but the last in-person races before COVID was the last springtime Rival Run Challenge here in Disney World. And then they did the virtual. And then when they brought back the races in like post-COVID, the springtime races became what they're now calling the Springtime Surprise Weekend. Mm-hmm. And that's the race weekend. So they have 4 race weekends a year, and it is what it is at this point. So there's Wine and Dine, which is kind of geared toward the Food and Wine Festival. It's right during that season in the fall. And so it's always like it's a sort of randomly selected group of movies that they go to, but they all kind of have a food theme that runs through them. And then, of course, there's like the iconic marathon weekend, which was where it all started back in the 90s, was with the Disney Marathon. And so that's the race weekend that includes the 5K, 10K, half, and full marathon. That's the only full marathon in January. And then they have Princess Race Weekend, of course, in February. So that's themed to Princess. And then the last one is Springtime Surprise now. And that's the one where they'll kind of pull in new theming every year. So that's kind of the only one that's sort of open to being themed to Star Wars at this point, unless they come up with something different. And actually they had R2-D2 and C-3PO as meet and greets last Springtime Surprise. Cool. And so that was very, very cool. Like to have C-3PO as a meet and greet was awesome. He was like, it was like a person moving C-3PO, right, which is wild. But when a lot of us saw that, we were like, oh my gosh, I wonder if that's like a hint that they're going to be bringing back the Star Wars races next year. And I think a lot of us got pretty excited about it. Yes. And then Springtime Surprise like announcements came, and it wasn't that. So we're still waiting, but I think a lot of us would love to see them come back, because it went away, during COVID. And so we never really knew we were having to say goodbye to the Star Wars races.
Exactly.
That being said, they do still very much incorporate Star Wars in different ways into the races, even though they're not like fully Star Wars themed. So like if the races go through studios, particularly like the marathon or the ones where you're spending a little bit more time in Hollywood studios, they do take you through Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, wow.
And it's really done up, and like they'll have very, very cool meet and greets. Like they had Mando with Grogu for Marathon with like this really very, very cool setup. Like he was kind of set back in one of those big kind of magnificent areas of Galaxy's Edge as a meet and greet, which was very cool. And then there'll be like sections of certain races where they just have the whole area kind of themed out to Star Wars. So they'll have like the music going and the lights and like the smoke going that you run through. And like that area will be very, very heavy on some of the really, really cool characters from Star Wars. So we haven't gotten our fully themed Star Wars. We haven't gotten like races fully themed to Star Wars back yet. But like they definitely do still play a part in a lot of the races, and they tend to be really cool strips of like, they'll take areas of the road and really do them up, and it tends to be really cool.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is
See, I knew the Force would be with us. I knew we'd get Star Wars on the schedule. Well, Lisa, it's been such a delight to chat with you. Your enthusiasm is absolutely contagious, and thank you so much, not only for being on the show, but just for all the people. Not that I can speak on behalf of your many, many countless fans, but you've inspired so many people. You've inspired me and helped to reiterate the things that me and my family hold as important. So thank you so much for that, and please let everybody know where they can find you and the Run Disney Companion.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really, really fun conversation. You can find me, like I said, my home is my own site, which is thecastlerun.com. And you can always reach out to me there. The book will live there as well. And then you can always find me on Instagram at The Castle Runner. And I'm very responsive to DMs there as well. And of course, we're here to talk about the book. The book comes out on Friday, this coming Friday, August 7th. It'll be out into the world. It's called the Run Disney Companion, and you'll be able to find it on Amazon. And you'll also be able to find it on my own website, or if you just pull up the runDisneyCompanion.com, it'll take you right there.
I love it. Well, Lisa was kind enough to send me over a sample copy, and it's awesome. It's awesome. My wife and I were looking at it today. So thank you again, Lisa, so much. Best of luck, and I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
For all things Star Wars, news, reviews, videos, and more, head to our home base, coffeewithkenobi.com. Don't forget to join the CWK Cafe on Facebook at coffeewithkenobi.com/community, our family-friendly, spoiler-free group for all your Star Wars thoughts, comments, and conversation. This podcast is possible thanks to the incredible support of the CWK Alliance. Want to help keep the show brewing? For as little as $1 a month, you can join the CWK Alliance and get access to CWK Pour-Over, our exclusive weekly audio and video podcast. Learn more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. And know this, 10% of your monthly contributions goes directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. Want to connect? You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Follow me on X at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR, Instagram, Threads, at DanZerCWK, and Blue Sky. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can follow Coffee with Kenobi across social media on X, Instagram, Threads, Pinterest, and Blue Sky, and give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. And if you want to send an email to the show, you can email us feedback at coffeewithkenobi.com. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll find over 700 videos, including past live shows, events, and this podcast. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps more Star Wars fans find our little corner of the galaxy. Do you need a speaker for your next event? Visit danzmedia.com. I love to discuss mythology, leadership, storytelling, or create something tailored to your audience. And finally, grab your CWK gear at coffeewithkenobi.com/shop and show your support in style.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.